Have you ever woken up to a deeper truth and suddenly felt utterly alone? You thought awakening would feel like coming home, like a breakthrough, finally seeing through the fog, stepping into clarity, into light. You imagine celebration, peace, connection, but instead something strange begins to unfold, something no one really prepares you for. The world starts to shift under your feet. Conversations you used to enjoy now feel empty. People you once felt close to now seem like distant echoes. You're smiling, nodding, doing all the right things, but inside it feels like you're tuning into a different frequency, one that no one else can hear. Why does growth make you feel so disconnected? Why does becoming more aware feel like you're drifting further away? This isn't you being antisocial. This isn't burnout. And it's certainly not arrogance. It's awakening. And it can be heartbreakingly lonely, at least in the beginning. So why does this happen? Why do the people and places you used to love start to feel draining, even foreign? Why do the same conversations about weekend plans, gossip, everyday complaints suddenly tighten something in your chest? You sit across from someone you once adored, and though they're speaking the same words they always did, something in you recoils. It's not their fault, and you're not judging them, but something fundamental has changed in you. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, understood this long before it became mainstream. He didn't just call it awakening. He called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, of peeling away layers of social conditioning, unconscious roles, and inherited beliefs. And though this process brings immense clarity and inner power, it also comes with a cost not many people talk about. Because as you awaken, something subtle but undeniable happens. The mask you've been wearing begins to crack. That mask, Jung called it the persona, the socially acceptable version of you, the one you put on to fit in, to be liked, to survive. It's the agreeable voice you use with family, the polished version of yourself you present at work. It's the part of you that says yes when your soul screams no. And for a while, that mask serves a purpose. It gives you comfort, safety, belonging. But awakening whispers, there's more. Suddenly you begin to question everything, not from rebellion, but from truth. You start saying no to the things that once felt automatic. You notice the subtle ways you've been dimming yourself just to keep the peace. And the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. Many of your relationships weren't built around your authentic self. They were built around your mask. So when that mask begins to slip, when you begin to show up as who you really are, some relationships can't survive. Not because anyone is bad, but because you're no longer playing the same role. That's why it feels so exhausting, so tense. You walk into a room and your nervous system automatically prepares to shrink, to perform, to please, to smile, to soften your truth. But now your soul is demanding something else. It's craving honesty, alignment, depth. And this clash between your old conditioning and your new consciousness is what truly drains you. It's not the people, it's the parts of yourself that are no longer willing to pretend. The truth awakening isn't about pulling away from others. It's about returning to yourself so fully that you begin to relate to others without abandoning who you are. And this is where Jung's concept of the shadow enters. The shadow isn't evil. It isn't darkness in the scary sense. It's just unseen. It's all the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject: your anger, your sadness, your fear, but also your brilliance, your intuitive knowing, your power, your sacred no. The shadow isn't your flaw. It's your forgotten wholeness waiting for light. And when you awaken, the veil lifts. You don't just see your own shadow, you start to feel the shadow in others. Conversations that once seemed harmless now feel saturated with unspoken tension. You pick up on what's not being said, the hurt behind someone's jokes, the fear hidden in their bravado, the desperation beneath their need to be liked. And you begin to realize most interactions aren't really between two people. They're between two personas, two carefully curated performances doing their best to avoid discomfort, avoid conflict, and cling to belonging. And when your soul awakens, you just can't play that game anymore. Not because you think you're better, not because you're rejecting anyone, but because your body physically begins to reject what is false. It's like trying to breathe in a room with no air. You crave truth the way lungs crave oxygen. Authenticity becomes your only nourishment. Here's where it gets personal and maybe a little uncomfortable. The people who trigger you the most, They often carry your own unintegrated shadow. That friend who always needs control, maybe that was you. That coworker desperate for validation, maybe that's the part of you still learning to self-validate. These people aren't enemies. They're mirrors, and the reflection can be painful. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And that realization stings. At first, it feels like others are the problem. Then you recognize you've done the same things. Then you see you still do. But the difference is awareness, the willingness to evolve. That's the real awakening. But be warned, this stage of awakening comes with a new trapped spiritual ego. The belief that you're the enlightened one and everyone else is asleep. That's not growth. That's just another mask. Real growth means humility. It means compassion for those who are still learning, including yourself, especially yourself. You begin to see that every version of you, even the ones you've outgrown, had a purpose. They helped you survive. They got you this far. And instead of resenting them, you thank them. You release them. And in that moment of compassion, healing begins. That tightness softens, that exhaustion lifts. And slowly your energy stops being about protection and starts being about presence. Here's the beautiful irony. The more you integrate your shadow, the less others trigger you. Not because they have changed, but because you're no longer fighting your own reflection in them. And as you reclaim more of your wholeness, you stop needing to retreat. You stop needing to disconnect. Because now you're not shrinking to connect, you're expanding. And the people meant for you, they'll feel it. They'll rise to meet it, or they'll gently fade away. And either way, you'll be at peace. So if you've ever felt like you're too sensitive, too aware, too much, I have news for you. You're not too much. You're just tuned in, and in the next part of this journey, we'll dive even deeper into the physiological side of awakening. Because this isn't just spiritual or emotional. Your body, especially your nervous system, plays a massive role in this process. The overstimulation, the fatigue, the waves of emotion. There's science behind the sensitivity, and once you understand it, everything starts to make sense. Stay with me. Because awakening isn't about escaping reality. It's about finally living in it fully, fiercely, and truthfully. So where were we? Right, your nervous system isn't broken. It's simply catching up with your awakening. You're undergoing an upgrade. And like any major system, update, it comes with a certain disruption. For most of your life, your body and mind adapted to chaos, to overstimulation, to noise, to the subtle art of pretending. You grew up learning how to navigate emotional static like it was the default background hum of life. You learned how to read a room before stepping into it. You trained yourself to smile when things felt off, to stay agreeable, to keep the peace. That wasn't weakness, it was survival. And if you happen to be an empath or someone who's naturally sensitive, this was even more true. You didn't just hear people, you absorbed them. You didn't just notice energy shifts, you felt them in your bones. You became a sponge soaking up every emotion, every nuance, every hidden undertone in the air around you. It's like walking into a storm and trying to remain dry, impossible. But you didn't know there was another way. Until now, because now awakening has amplified everything. You're no longer just tuned into the surface. You begin sensing the invisible. Dissonance, unspoken tension, subtle manipulation, even when it's unintentional, all of it lights up in your awareness like neon. You catch micro expressions, energy mismatches, emotional undercurrents. You sense what people aren't saying just as much as what they are. And your nervous system, still wired for your old way of being, doesn't quite know what to do with all this new data. So it reacts the way it always has: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You may feel tension in your body, random fatigue after a short conversation, emotional flooding that comes out of nowhere, and a growing urge to retreat, to just be alone in silence where things feel safe again. No one really tells you that awakening isn't all mountaintop bliss and meditation peace. Often it feels like sensory overload in a crowded room. A simple conversation can feel like static in your mind, as if your system is overloaded and there's nowhere to offload the charge. Because your body hasn't learned how to regulate itself in this new heightened state of awareness yet. Your consciousness may be soaring, but your nervous system is still learning to fly. This is where many people make the mistake of thinking they're broken. They start wondering, why can't I handle people anymore? Why am I so tired all the time? But the truth is, you're not broken. You're just not numb anymore. You're feeling things that were always there, but that your conditioning filtered out. That old numbness was a protective layer. Now that it's dissolving, you're left with everything. And that's overwhelming, but also profoundly real. You're not too sensitive. You're accurately sensitive. You're no longer ignoring reality to stay comfortable. You're tuning into life in its rawest, most unfiltered form. It's not easy, but it's honest. The good news: it doesn't stay this intense forever. As your nervous system slowly learns to co-regulate with your higher awareness, things begin to shift. The chaos softens. The emotional spikes become gentler. You start to notice things without being consumed by them. You begin to discern energy without absorbing it. You start feeling alongside others instead of for them. You can witness someone's pain without losing yourself in it. And that's when social interaction becomes sacred again, not exhausting. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop armoring up just to get through a conversation. You remain anchored in your truth and allow others to be where they are without needing to fix or carry them. This is the beginning of a new kind of relating, one that doesn't deplete you. So what happens after the social fatigue? After the recalibration? What kind of relationships begin to form when you start showing up from your true self instead of obligation, guilt, or habit? Something beautiful and honestly liberating. The moment you stop performing, the energy shifts. You're no longer choosing people from a place of fear. You're choosing them from resonance. You stop trying to keep everyone happy to avoid conflict. You start honoring your boundaries even if it means tension. You stop staying just to be liked. You begin staying where you feel seen. It's subtle, but it changes everything. Instead of searching for safety in others, you begin embodying it. You become the anchor you once looked for. Carl Jung once said that the goal of psychological development isn't perfection, it's integration. That means welcoming every part of yourself, the conscious, the unconscious, the shadow, the light, the wounds, the wisdom, all of it. Not to become flawless, but to become whole. And from that wholeness, your relationships shift. You start attracting people who speak your energetic language. People who don't drain you because they don't require you to shrink. They don't need you to carry their wounds. They're learning to hold space for yours too. These are soul-aligned connections. And more often than not, they arrive after a season of solitude. And know that solitude wasn't just loneliness. It was a clearing, a recalibration of your field, a rewriting of your energetic boundaries. It may have felt like isolation, but really it was preparation. You weren't breaking, you were making room. If you're in the thick of that solitude now, and you've been feeling like something's wrong because you no longer connect with others the way you used to take a breath, nothing's wrong, you're simply evolving. You're not meant to relate the same way anymore. You're meant to relate from a deeper space, from clarity, from presence, from alignment. And that changes everything. You stop mirroring other people's energy just to keep the peace. You begin letting your own peace guide the interaction. You stop trying to prove your worth. You embody it. You stop connecting out of guilt. You start connecting from conscious choice. And no, this doesn't make you cold. It doesn't make you detached. It makes you anchored. It makes your love cleaner, clearer, more powerful because it's no longer filtered through fear. Yes, some people will fall away, and that hurts, but it's not abandonment. It's alignment. They were in sync with an older version of you, one you've since outgrown, grieving those relationships. That's part of the awakening too. But grief isn't regression. It's a return to yourself. Every ending is an invitation. And every person who stays or arrives afterward is meeting the real you. Not the performance, not the persona, but the version of you who no longer needs to pretend. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege, it includes the fatigue, the disconnection, the overstimulation, the quiet ache of loneliness, all of it. Because the real reward of awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about reclaiming your inner space so fully that no one can pull you out of it again. So if you're in that strange in-between where the noise feels unbearable, where you're tired of pretending, tired of pleasing, tired of shrinking, and trust that, it doesn't mean something's wrong. It means you're waking up. And when you come through the other side, you won't just relate differently, you'll live differently. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who's been feeling the same fatigue. Leave a comment below. When was the moment you realized you no longer related to certain people in your life? What changed in you? And don't forget to subscribe to Cyphoria. This is just the beginning of everything you are becoming.